When we think about climate change, I think that Indigenous people are seen as a potential resource, but there's a lot of tension between Western science and Indigenous forms of knowledge. And to a certain extent, we want Indigenous knowledge to validate traditional and Western science. And to the extent that it doesn't, that tension tends to cast aside Indigenous forms of knowledge. And we're starting to see examples that are telling us that Western science has often been wrong where Indigenous knowledge had reasonably predicted. For example, buildings on permafrost in the north of Manitoba, where Cree elders have told building developers, you can't place a building there, it will sink into the ground. And Western science said, it will be fine. And lo and behold, the building sank into the ground, despite all of the engineering reports and expertise that were devoted to that particular project. So I see this great tension between Indigenous forms of knowledge and Western science, and bringing things to the table in an equal way is really challenging because of power dynamics, but also because of how we think things should be brought forward in a provable and tangible and empirical way. Our whole legal system is based on relationships, and in that it's respectful relationships, it's sharing and showing love and kindness. And doing this work and engaging people is, in a sense, some form of reconciliation, because it's allowing us to share what is best of us. And for the relationship between Indigenous people and research has been a difficult one in the past, I think, because of how Indigenous knowledge is structured. Indigenous knowledge is really clear that it's not meant for us to hold. Does not belong to anyone, that it's meant to be something that is shared, that belongs to all people. And that's been exploited pretty dramatically in the past, and decontextualized and perverted in some senses, and capitalized upon. And we need to be conscious now in this work that we will continue to do collaboratively, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that sharing is coming from a really good place, from an unselfish place, but it does have a goal and objective, which is this collective sense of well-being, and that it's not about appropriating Indigenous forms of knowledge, but actually meaningfully engaging, and not taking things out of Indigenous communities, but allowing Indigenous communities and people to make contributions based on Indigenous knowledge. And often generosity is something that, generosity of spirit, of knowledge, of time, is taken advantage of. And that is probably one of my main messages right now, is that if we are going to live in mutually respectful relationships, if we are going to engage in reconciliation, that has to be built on the basis of relationships that are respectful, that are genuine, that are not on the terms of one party or the other, but that are mutually negotiated. In a way, we're coming back to a same period of treaty making that we've already lived between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And what's interesting is I think that non-Indigenous people, although some may feel that they hold the balance of power, I think there are a lot of non-Indigenous people that are recognizing that there is a need, there is an important need for us to do reparatory work on environmental and social issues, and that can only be done in that context of working together meaningfully.